Cairo, Seattle.
This is Fight, an MMA podcast with Bob Stelton and Danny O'Neill. Insight and analysis from every angle.
You can't dispute the results.
The fights.
That was the biggest pay-per-view card in the history of the UFC.
Fighters.
We're here with Carlos Condit. He joins us.
Uriah, how you doing, man?
Doing good. How are you?
And everything from the world of mixed martial arts. It's time for Fight.
I think one of my favorite things about fighting and about MMA and about the UFC is the international flavor. We're going to get a little bit of that today. We're talking to Gegard Mousasi, who is Dutch of Middle Eastern descent, Iranian.
Right.
He's been fighting for...
Ever?
I mean, he goes back. He fought in big time. He was a prodigy level fighter in Pride.
2003 is when he started.
Yeah, and he was fighting in Pride when Pride was still putting on big shows, and he was this young. He's 31 now. We saw it this week with this past card. You saw what Conor McGregor brings, the enthusiasm, the excitement that he brings. There is, in a different way, even than basketball, there's this sort of the feelings of national, and maybe because it's style of fighters and of all the different things on The Ultimate Fighter this season. One of the cool things has been to see guys from different parts of the globe coming together, and it's a shared form of competition.
Yeah, it's a fantastic melting pot is what it is. It's interesting to see the passion that some of the fighters' fan bases have, and nothing trumps what Conor McGregor's doing. I mean, you have people flying over from Ireland for every one of his fights, and we're talking thousands of people, not a handful of hardcores, thousands, and they stay there all week. And I experienced it firsthand in Vegas. They are there all week, and they are representing, and they are absolutely berserk. I don't know who else touches them in that sort of level of fandom outside of George St. Pierre. Had a huge following. It doesn't feel as far away. It's Canada. You know what I mean?
Plus, he's quasi-French.
Yeah. It's
they cannot handle my rhythm.
My rhythm.
My rhythm.
What's funny is it sounds the same way as Connor talks. So with 13, my rhythm, I'm gonna hit him 13 times. But it's interesting to see the Brazilians. A lot of them have a very rabid fan base. I don't know that they travel the way that they did for GSP and more specifically for Connor, but yeah, it's awesome because you just see the level of passion in all of these different pockets of the world. Right, you get a chance to experience these guys and talk to them, and so many great personalities. I mean, they're truly, and I tell people this, despite what it looks like on the surface, a bunch of guys just beating the daylights out of each other, and they're savages, they're animals, and you talk to them, and more often than not, they're really intelligent and they're really nice guys. I mean, a lot of them have great senses of humor. I mean, they're sort of counter to what they look like in the cage, right? It's not what you would expect, and I think a lot of people who aren't that familiar with the sport are surprised by whether it's somebody from this country or any other country at how, just how gentle they can be in conversation and how entertaining and nice they can be.
It's Fight, an MMA podcast. I'm Danny O'Neill here with Bob Stelton, like we do every week. I think my first time that I remember watching the UFC, it was still the tournament style, kind of the carnival act back in the mid-'90s. And I remember seeing the contrast because it was initially billed as whose fighting style is best,
right?
Sumo or Zulu fighter. And I do remember this mismatch. There weren't weight classes. There weren't all these things. And it's kind of this cheap carnival trick is what it was initially. That's not.
Were there hucksters involved?
Yeah, there probably were some carnival hucksters that were there. So Jim Brown was doing commentary,
that's right.
Which was weird. But it was this sort of freak show, and I do remember the big sumo fighter fighting a little skinny guy who was black, and I'm not. I think he was African, but I don't want to say that for sure because he might have been African American. But he was certainly dressed up in tribal garb,
right?
And I remember the big sumo guy basically getting in a position where
wasn't Chemo, was it?
No, it wasn't Chemo. Chemo's a legit fighter.
He's the one who got his teeth kicked out.
No, that's the Samoan guy that I'm thinking of.
Oh, okay.
Tolo. God, I'm going to have to look up his name to make sure.
Okay.
I'll look it up.
All I remember is just slow motion video of a tooth flying out of the face, out of the cage.
Because that was the karate or savate expert that kicked him in the face, and I think his first name was Gordon. He fought in the final, the first one.
Okay.
And when he kicked the big Samoan dude in the face, he had a tooth that got lodged in his foot. His foot got infected later.
Ugh.
Yeah, he was down on his knee. It was, but the big sumo guy basically got in a situation where he had his weight on a guy he outweighed by more than 100 pounds, and then he ends up elbowing him in the head a couple times and knocking him out. And it's sort of this caricature farce. Now you see it, and it's this international, like you said, melting pot of guys who there are some differences and certainly some sort of discipline differences, but they're also all competing. The level of parity across different nations and different styles of fighters, I think is one of the more intriguing things about it. Yeah,
you do see, I mean, in boxing, it was always very easy to pick out a European fighter. There was a very distinct style. They're much more upright, a little more stiff and robotic, than the commentators would talk about. It's a very European style. Yeah, you see elements of that in MMA, but for the most part, everybody's kind of training the same things. Everybody's working on wrestling and jiu-jitsu and their stand-up, and everybody's got a discipline that they're much more adept at. They're much more of an expert at, if you will, right? Everybody's got their thing. Conor's a great stand-up fighter. The other guys are great jiu-jitsu fighters. But everybody has each of those elements in their game. And so there is that similarity, yet you can see some differences, whether it's guys from Brazil who are extremely, extremely schooled in jiu-jitsu, and oftentimes their stand-up isn't great. It can be good. There are exceptions, but for me, that's what makes it so entertaining, is the parity, is the fact that you've got, it's not U.S. dominates Brazil and everybody's better than this country, or this country really is lagging. It's across the board. It's across the board, and the parity, I think, is the perfect word that you hit on there. That you see it regardless of where people come from.
And they all have to be balanced. If you're really great at one thing in mixed martial arts, you're going to get beat by another thing. If you're a great wrestler, you're going to get knocked out because you're not going to be able to, or you're not going to deal with being on your back, or you're going to get choked out by.
Yeah, one day you're not going to be able to take somebody down, and you're going to take a beating.
Yeah. So I looked at it's Taylor Tooley is this, and he was the sumo wrestler that got kicked in the face. Got kicked in the face by I almost had it right. Gerard Gordeau.
Okay.
Was his name, and he was the guy, and he fought in a gi. And he kicked him in the face while his knee was down. So it's a different guy that I'm thinking of that pinned the smaller fighter underneath him and just elbowed him a bunch of times.
Boy, how far this sport has come.
Yeah, I know. But I thought of that a couple reasons. First, we are talking to Gegard Mousasi, he's kind of been and different fighters will use the term Ronin, kind of the traveling warrior, because there is this sort of mystique to the idea of being a professional fighter and going and fighting around the globe for huge pots of money, and kind of whether it's the blood sport illusion, and you hear him. The other thing is Conor and what he's meant. Did you see Marc Gasol last night in the Grizzlies game? He did the McGregor walk.
Oh, did he?
He hit a three-pointer.
Floppy arms?
He did. He hit a three-pointer or a long shot from the corner, and all of a sudden he's... And they talked about it and said it was the Spanish McGregor.
Really?
Because Marc Gasol's from Spain. And that sort of...
Is that the ultimate strut of confidence? Is that what that is?
It's goofy looking. Like when he did
it's
it,
like a cartoon. It reminds me of an old school cartoon. Just
the funny thing is when Conor does it, it doesn't seem goofy to me. When Gasol did it, it seems totally goofy. Somehow it fits with who Conor is. And like the picture of the gorilla eating a heart that's tattooed on his chest.
And the lion on his belly.
Like all of the different things, it just kind of, I don't know. Maybe it's because did you see what he wore for the press conference? The white fur coat.
Oh, yes.
And then he tried to bash him in the head with a chair.
Yeah, he got ripped for that.
He did. People didn't like that.
Yeah, saying he's taken the act too far. And the problem with Conor being as bombastic as he is, he probably has a sense of, I've got to top it.
Yeah.
I've got to top what I did before. I threw bottles at Diaz. What am I going to do this time? All right, I'll pick up a chair. And you start going, all right, how much of this is genuine? How much of this is a concerted effort to put on a show, to give people what they want? And we talked about this last week before the fight, that, the unfortunate part, even though it's paying off in truckloads of money for him and attention and publicity, is that his skill gets overshadowed because it's all about his actions outside of the cage and what he says and what he does. And that's the much bigger story. His personality is so much bigger than his skill level right now. I think after this last fight, his skill level definitely got much more attention, but it's still about, did you hear what he said? Did you see what he did? And that's great. It's worked out well for him. But that, for me as a fan, that's the one area I look at and go, man, it's a shame that has become so big that it's overshadowed a brilliant fighter.
we decided last time that you like McGregor in the same way that I like Richard Sherman.
Yeah.
I'm wearing Richard Sherman's shirt right now.
You mad, bro?
I'm headed to Boston tonight, so I'm going to go troll the entire city there.
Seems like a good idea.
I bought my wife a matching shirt. She boarded a plane this morning. They're getting ready to take off right about now.
Danny and his wife versus Boston.
That's right. What's up?
I don't like the odds.
They're a bunch of overeducated simps. I'll be curious to see if Conor, I don't want to say Richard's mellowed out because he hasn't, but people stopped taking shots at him and stopped kind of messing with him. He got to sit on his throne. If the same thing happens with Conor here, he destroyed Alvarez.
It wasn't competitive. It wasn't competitive. I mean, we both thought he was going to win. Eddie Alvarez is a tough guy.
Mm-hmm.
I've never thought, and we talked about this as well, so this isn't Monday Morning Quarterback, but I've never thought he's an elite fighter. I think he's a very good fighter who's tough. He's just a gritty, you knock him down, he's going to get back up, and he's always going to be in it. I've seen that guy get knocked down, get wobbled, look like he was going to be out. He's got kind of a Frankie Edgar element to him where he can get rocked and you think, oh, geez, here it comes. And somehow he finds the reserve to come back and be competitive and often win. He couldn't do it this time. It was a different level of impact on the punches that landed on him. And it's exactly what I said. And this is not patting myself on the back, but timing and accuracy. You saw it on display. You couldn't have seen a better example of timing and accuracy with Conor McGregor. And it wasn't that he throws the hardest shot and he's the most powerful, but speed and timing and all of that will sort of negate raw power. And it's just, it was the perfect display. He couldn't have been more accurate. His timing was perfect. Every time Eddie Alvarez threw a right hand, he countered with the left and landed it. Every time. He had him timed, and he just sat there and waited. And to see his composure, see how calm Conor was? He was looking at his chest the whole time, and he kept his distance, had his hands out there. He measured him the whole time, and it was probably one of the easiest nights of his life.
He destroyed him. And now, sort of the next, I don't think he's next, but Woodley's the one that he kind of sparred
got
with.
into a beef
he
with.
Stared down. He borrowed the title for the holding two belt shot.
Yeah, they borrowed his belt.
Yeah, they had to do it, and then he made a reference to that. Woodley, who had, I thought he won the fight. I thought he won. I know you said you watched it again later, and your initial reaction was the same as what you thought, that it was a draw.
Yeah, that's what I tweeted out before the decision came down, because I thought it was 3-2 for Thompson. I thought Thompson won 3 rounds, but the 4th round was so dominant for Woodley. You give him a 10-8 round, it's a draw, even though that became a point of confusion at the end of the fight. His Buffer's out there reading the scores, 47-47, 47-47, 48-47 for a split decision Woodley. I'm going, what?
No, not how it works.
That would be a majority draw.
Not how it works.
So either way, the result was the same. Woodley keeps his belt. It just doesn't go down as a win the way it was originally announced.
It was a great fight. Maybe I don't know if it's surprising or not, Romero handled Weidman. I mean,
the first round though, Weidman did well.
Yeah, but you could also feel that if he wasn't gonna take him down, I felt that Romero, he was either going to get ground out in an exceptionally boring victory by Weidman, or he was going to eventually catch him. That Weidman's only chance was to lay and pray. That was really the only way. That I didn't feel like he was doing damage when he had him down.
No, he wasn't, but he was winning.
He was winning.
He was winning, but he wasn't hurting him. Romero is a guy that gets gassed. His gas tank is the question mark for him. So I think they were working towards getting him into deep water and just seeing how he looked like he was starting to fatigue a little bit. I mean, it was sort of the perfect storm. I mean, Weidman shot on him and put his head in the wrong spot. And for a southpaw fighter, his head's supposed to go to the outside, and he went towards the power leg, which came up at the perfect time and ripped open a cut on his head that immediately looked like a water faucet. I mean, it wasn't a trickle of blood, a little drip, drip, drip. I mean, it immediately started pouring out onto the
When's
canvas.
the last time you've seen a cut that big? Because I was thinking, there have been some awful cuts. Marvin Eastman, right? Looked like he got an axe taken to his head.
Where it bleeds that quickly and that profusely.
I have not seen something bleed, because even Eastman's, like, it was just split. You could see this big meaty
Diego
gash.
Sanchez has had a million cuts where you could see the eye bone. I mean, and head cuts bleed a lot. I mean, he's been cut every fight for most of his career, but something like that where the amount of blood that came out immediately as soon as he hit the canvas and his head kind of went down, it poured out. I thought, this guy's going to bleed out.
Oh.
What's going on there? Yeah. This is awful.
Yeah.
It was ugly. It was ugly. But that card lived up to the hype.
It did. Yes, absolutely it did.
And there's
even the undercard.
There's much to discuss about that card because there was a lot that happened, and I was really happy with it. I mean, just the way the card, as opposed to 200, where you just kind of left that whole card going, yeah.
I know you're pumped too about Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, we'll talk about that.
Nurmagomedov. We're talking to Gegard Mousasi, who's taken on Uriah Hall. It'll be the second time he's faced Hall. We get in the cage with him next on Fight. Hey, Gegard, how are things going this week?
I'm good, sir. Thank you.
What do you look for in this fight? Obviously, the outcome, not what you wanted last time.
Well, I'm looking for revenge. That's all. Nothing personal. I have to respect Uriah for giving me the rematch. And it's just a fight for my satisfaction, let's say.
When you go back and watch that fight, was it an obvious mistake? Was there something that you trained that you didn't do in the cage? Or what do you see when you go back and look at that first matchup?
Well, the first match, I see myself in a rush to hurt him. I'm in a rush to go forward and hitting him, I think that was the mistake that I made. I was in a more forward movement. He just threw the kick, and I reacted to that. So I bent down, and he just caught me on my face. So that's another mistake I'm going to make.
Gegard, I'm curious because you have such a long career now, and you're still a very young guy at 31. How did you get started so early in MMA and then ended up going and fighting in Japan?
Well, I did some judo when I was 8, but nothing special. I started boxing, slowly transferred to kickboxing, and then grappling. I got a win in Rotterdam, and then they got me to invite in Japan. I fought 2 times in Deep. I won both times in that organization, and I was able to fight in Pride.
What was it like fighting in Pride?
Well, it was the biggest shows for me back then. Also, Pride was the biggest at that moment. It was fun, you just show up. But I was unexperienced, I was watching those guys. They were heavy as hell because they were cutting weight. I didn't know about weight cutting back then. I was just fighting. I was looking at them and I said, wow, these guys are big. And but it was a good experience. When you win, you would go get paid in cash, and you would just go home. It was an easy time.
Now you've moved around in the weight. You fought at heavyweight before, did you not?
Yes, I fought Mark Hunt. I fought K1 fights at heavyweight. Gary Goodrich I fought. So I got a couple of heavyweight fights.
So does middleweight feel more natural for you? Is it a tough weight cut? I mean, after you move around, I assume you find the weight division you feel like suits you the best.
Well, yeah, middleweight is my actually the best weight for me. I'm here at my best, strongest. Heavyweight is the easiest division. The heavier you go, the less technical they get. So, but they have knockout power. So, I would say middleweight is the best division for me because I don't give any advantages. I'm cutting weight now also. So,
what do you walk around at when you're not training? What's your natural weight?
Well, I could go up all the way to 220, 225 if I don't do a lot of training. But I cut around 15 to 18 pounds.
Gegard, how did you know fighting was for you? Was the career that you wanted?
Well, I used to watch the boxers. I wanted to have that, money, women, some respect. I wasn't rich, so when you're a kid, you think, okay, how do I get that? And for me, it was fighting. So that's the way I started with fighting. And then I fought on the street one time to help a friend. Well, I thought, I'm tough, so I started with boxing. So that's where I got started.
It's amazing to watch your career because you have damn near 50 fights now. You fought all over the globe. Is this what you had hoped for when you started your fighting career?
Yeah, I don't know. The goal now is UFC title because that's the highest stage you can achieve. And I think once I get that, and finally I will be able also. If I retire, if I lose the title, then I know I've done everything. I got in titles every organization I fought, and I can say I was one of the best middleweights. So I think that's the only goal I was left. So the highest what you can accomplish now is UFC. So that's the goal, and that's the way to finish it.
Yeah, I guess what I was going to ask you is, has it been as much money and as many women as you expected when you were a kid? Wanted to become a fighter?
It's not bad, women are headaches. I learned that quickly, so for me it's good. And money, I'm not short of money. I'm not that of a big money guy. I'm living a very comfortable life. So anything extra is just extra. It's I don't need it. It's not, but I do fight for money. I'm not fighting for my fun. I don't know. Some people say I fight for the honor or whatever they say. They're crazy. They should go take some medical pills because no one is fighting for their fun or So that's the deal. I'm comfortable and everything is fine now. Yeah, I'm satisfied. Yeah.
Hey, so 48 fights. And what's funny, Gegard, is I watch you in the cage and you are so calm. Your expression never changes no matter what's going on. You never seem tense. Is that something, and I didn't see your very early fights, and I'm wondering, is that something that developed over time, or have you always sort of had that demeanor in the cage?
Well, experience. I used to go into the fights when I was beginning of my career. I thought I should be angry and I'm gonna beat the guy. I should be aggressive. But over time you understand that the emotion it doesn't have any place in the cage or in the ring because it's gonna just affect you in a bad way. So it just that's the way I feel. I don't feel a lot once again. I'm not afraid. I'm not happy. If I win, I'm just happy that I got the job done. I can. It's a waste. Load off my shoulders. That's the only thing I feel after the fight. It's I'm the same guy.
Have you ever? You talk about emotion not being part of it, which I've heard a lot of fighters say it works against you if you're really angry or really emotional. Have you ever fought anybody you truly disliked? Like, I really want to hurt this guy. Has there ever been an opponent across from you felt that way?
Yeah, King Mo. That guy was that was
a dick. You fought angry in that one.
Yeah, back then also, I wasn't so much training wrestling, but every time I stood up, I wanted to hit him so bad, I would just go and throw hooks, and he would just take me down again. So, that didn't work out for me. I think it got in my head, so. Yeah, that's the only fight I say I fought emotionally. Previous fights, when I was beginning of my career, I'm amateur.
Yeah, I'm curious. Like I said, as I've watched you recently, your stand-up has really improved, and I'm just wondering how much of your training has been focused on stand-up. Because to me, as I've watched you over the years, I would say that's the area of your game that's truly grown.
Yeah, I think I'm more composed. I know myself better. I used to rush a lot of times. But now, I know I can fight. My stand-up is the best thing about me. I think I have a good feeling of distance. I see punches coming. I have an eye for that. And, I came in the UFC. I had the ACL. My ACL was torn when I fought Latifi.
Mm-hmm.
I had a 2-time operation on my ACL. So, even with Machida fight, I wasn't even training kicks because the injury is gone, but you have a trauma of that, so you're not gonna kick. So it took me a while. Now I'm back to my old, and of course with the experience that I have, I feel I have the best stand-up in the middleweight. But in MMA it's different because you cannot always show that because you have the takedowns, you have all those extra things that come along. But I feel the stand-up part I'm the best.
Hey, last one before we let you go, Gegard. You know, fighting Uriah Hall and getting revenge would be great, but I've heard you talk about, this doesn't really put me closer to a title shot, and there are a lot of guys that are in line, whether it's Luke Rockhold or Jacare or anybody else for that matter. Who do you look to next? I mean, if you look at this as not the next step to a title shot, do you look at, all right, I need somebody who's a top 5 opponent next, or how do you view the next fight?
Well, I fought Jacare twice, so I don't think people would like to see that fight again. The next guy is Luke Rockhold. It's not Chris Weidman just lost. He's coming off 2 losses, so he needs a win or 2 maybe to get a title shot. So what I'm looking for now would make sense after this fight is Luke Rockhold to see who's next. But Jacare is ahead of. I can't. I'm not gonna say I'm the first guy. But it's before me. It's Jacare and Luke Rockhold. Those are the guys. Luke is injured now, so I don't know when he's gonna come back. So I feel I'm right up there. I need one more win after this.
He is Gegard Mousasi, who's going to be taking on Uriah Hall this weekend at UFC Fight Night 99. Gegard, is really fun to talk to you. Thank you so much, and best of luck this weekend.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Got Fight Night 99 coming up, which is hard to believe. I remember, I think I went to Fight Night, I think it's like 3 or 4. I'll need to look back and see when it was.
There's 2 fight nights on the same night this weekend.
Because it's Belfast and then Melbourne?
It's Brazil, Sao Paulo, Brazil, and then Ireland, Belfast, Ireland. So you've got Mousasi versus Hall 2.
Yes.
That headlines 1, and then the other one is Ryan Bader versus Nogueira 2. That's the one in Brazil.
I'm having a hard time getting motivated to see Nogueira fight anymore. I'll be really honest.
I feel like they are the oldest sort of young guys I've ever seen.
They're not sort of young.
They're sort of young in life, but old for the game of MMA.
Yeah. I get it, and you put on that. It's hard for me to get motivated to watch them fight.
I'm with you.
And then in Melbourne is next week's Thanksgiving weekend. There is, and that one includes Brunson is on that card.
Yeah, Derek Brunson, I believe, is headlining it.
I'm not quite ready to move on. You mentioned how much we have to get through from UFC 205.
Right.
Start with the undercard. Nurmagomedov has the biggest victory. He looked really dominant against Michael Johnson.
Got rocked early.
He did?
Got rocked early. I thought, uh-oh.
You got to wonder about Johnson's punching power, though. Great boxer. Doesn't really have the power to finish guys, and then when guys take him down, he's got an issue finishing fights.
Right.
I mean, we saw that against Diaz. And Diaz was able to withstand some punishment from him and then won as the fight went on.
That's when Diaz was pointing at him after he hit him, like laughing, like, I got you. I just hit you.
Had to be humiliating. That was the fight that
had to be frustrating. It was frustrating to watch. I was watching going, shut up.
See, I kind of liked it. I was like, oh, look, he just pointed at him again. He's like, I hit you. I hit you right there. That one hurt. Then he open hand, he stocked and slapped him a few times.
Yeah. Ugh.
So you got Michael Johnson losing to Nurmagomedov, who then promptly proclaims that he's ready for a title shot.
Yeah.
Miesha Tate, who we talked to last week, losing to Rocky Pennington, and in the cage afterward, announcing her retirement, which on the one hand is very surprising given that she's not even a year removed from being champion. She's not even 6 months removed from being the champion in that division.
She's one fight removed.
And on the other hand, it is understandable when you consider the punishment that she's taken and the fact of how many losses have happened relatively recently for her.
And when you lose to some, and this is not a shot at Pennington, I think she's a good fighter, but I don't think she's an elite fighter. I don't think she's a champ. I don't think she'll ever hold a belt. She's not, and I know that sounds like I'm ripping her, but I just don't feel like she's that level. I don't think, she's somebody you talk about in those terms. And Miesha, if she can't beat her, it seemed like that kind of set in, and Miesha just looked off.
Yep,
she looked off, and she didn't get. I've seen her take much worse in the way of punishment, but it was just kind of a 3-round, just kind of pecking and picking her apart, and just she didn't really have any good moments. Like it just something was wrong in the cage. Just watching her, she just seemed off, and she was eating punch. She kept eating this jab, and I'm like, move your head, just small things. And I don't know what, all of her commentary leading up to it is like every other fighter.
Correct.
Best camp of my life.
Yes.
I've never felt better. Best shape of my life. They all say the same thing. And then they get in there, and for whatever reason, something happens.
It's never seemed like with her that she can't pull the trigger. 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 She can't pull the There's
Right.
always been an issue with her taking punishment. This was one where it seemed like she never let loose. Like she
Right.
never really. And then you put it in context with even the victory over Holm. That was something she pulled out.
She was losing.
Correct.
Yeah.
And that if you and that's not to minimize or say take away. Oh, but she hasn't fought a great fight. She's been losing most of her fights outside of pulling out that win against Holm. When you look at recent, I love watching Misha fight. I wish her the best. I was bummed at how that fight ended, and I found myself kind of nodding when she said she was done.
It's kind of a relief, right? When there's a fighter that you like, and we both like her, she's really just a nice person, and she's had an incredibly exciting career because she goes in there and takes damage and isn't afraid and doesn't shy away from engaging her opponent. There was a sense of relief of, okay, yeah, I don't want to see this person I really like taking that kind of punishment. It's not necessary. And if you're taking it from somebody like Raquel Pennington, again, not to diminish it, if you're not able to beat her, then why would we believe you're going to beat Amanda Nunes, who absolutely tuned her up?
Yes.
If they were ever to rematch. Ronda Rousey, who abused her twice, and the second time she did go a few rounds with her, but ultimately Ronda had her way with her. Or if Cyborg ever comes down to and she had talked about meeting Cyborg at 140, that would have been an annihilation.
No, I don't want.
And I don't want to see that.
I don't want to see it either. You have Joanna Jędrzejczyk winning the Polish women's MMA
That was a good
title.
fight.
Yes, it was.
That was a good fight.
She was more competitive.
And how do you say her last name? Is it Kovalkiewicz?
Yeah, you want to ask me? How long did it take
Carolina?
me to get? How long did it take me
Carolina?
to get Jędrzejczyk?
I think it's Kovalkiewicz. We'll call her Carolina. She may be the toughest girl.
How about Kolkiewicz?
Okay. I'll know who you're talking about.
Kolkiewicz.
First of all, I love the way she stands in the cage. Did you notice that?
Uh-huh.
I saw it in her last fight. As everybody's doing the ring introduction, usually a fighter's pacing back and forth, and they're getting a drink of water, and they're stomping their feet and they're pacing as Bruce Buffer is introducing them. She leans against. She puts her hands behind her back, crosses her feet, and just leans against the cage and sits there like she's just bird watching. Just and there's nothing about her that looks the least bit tense. She just watches. They introduce her, and she doesn't even raise her hand. She just sits there the whole time until the referee goes, "You ready? You ready? Fight." Until that moment, she doesn't take her arms from behind her back and just leaning against the cage like, okay. And she took big blows.
Yes, she did.
And she didn't mark up at all,
Nope.
which was surprising. She had like they both had little hematomas on the side of their head. But in terms of bruising or swollen eyes or anything, for the amount of punches that Jędrzejczyk landed, she was unmarked. And she just kept coming forward, and she landed her shots. That was a good fight.
Yes, it was.
She's a tough girl.
Yeah.
Carolina.
And so is Joanna.
Yeah, she got tested.
Yep.
She got tested. What I thought was interesting at the end of it is they asked her, was this the toughest fight of your career? And she said, well, the last fight with Claudia she referred to that as her toughest fight.
Yep.
Which was surprising because I thought she got hit much more in this fight. Now, maybe tough in the terms of...
I think she had to work harder against Claudia.
Would take her down and would really make her work. But in terms of taking punishment, I mean... she looked like she had a broken nose. Her nose was swollen.
Yep.
She had the goose egg on the side of her face. I mean, she was lumped up. She took some shots. She showed her toughness, where usually she's the one dishing out the punishment in a really lopsided fashion, typically, except for Claudia. But this was a nice fight. This was interesting.
She's going to be a star, I think. And if she isn't already, Joanna Jędrzejczyk, the way her personality, her toughness, the way she fights, she's fantastic to watch. Weidman Romero, and now looks like we've got Romero is the next fight Bisping. Bisping's flipping him off afterward.
Yeah.
I found myself, I already started, like when we started talking about Romero and how he was able to kind of cut through Weidman and, he didn't have, it's because I'm building up Romero because he's the one that's going to decimate Bisping.
Whoever is fighting Bisping becomes your favorite fighter that night.
Yeah, that's apparently it.
Yeah.
He's like my Obi-Wan Kenobi. He is my only hope.
Yeah, you've got a few guys who are jockeying for position there. I mean, whether it's Jacare, whether it's Gegard Mousasi, if he gets through this fight against Uriah Hall, or Luke Rockhold, you've got in Romero. So you've got kind of a whole group of guys who have a legitimate claim to I should be fighting next. Rockhold lost, so not as much. But yeah, you've got some nice options to root for you to beat Bisping.
You do have that. The main event you have with Conor and what happens next. You talked about what he said afterward.
Yeah, watch the post-fight press conference, and it sounds like he might take a little time. He'll kind of talk out of both sides, right? He's like, they were saying, when do you want to fight again? How do you feel? He's like, I'm fresh. I'm only 28 years old, and there's no damage to me. And, he's like, look at me. I don't have a mark on me, which was true. So he's implying he could get in there next week and fight. But at the same time, he's having a kid. He announced he's having a child. And, he was talking about addressing that and really, being a guy that is there for that. So maybe he's going to take some time off. And then he switched it to, I know what I'm worth here. And I want what's coming to me. And he was implying an ownership stake in the UFC, which I'm going, okay, man, I get that you're the biggest draw. You should be making more money because you are putting more butts in the seats and you are putting more. You're two of the top three, or maybe the top three now pay-per-views in the history of this company. I get it. You do have a claim to more. But an ownership stake? Because he was bringing up, hey, you've got celebrities that own this. You got all the people that bought it. He brought up Conan O'Brien and all that. So he said, I know what I'm worth, and I want what's coming to me. They're going to have to come talk to me now. He was like, who owns this company now? I don't even know who owns it. Conan O'Brien owns some of the company. They're going to have to come talk to me now. I was like, okay, I don't think his contract is up. Well, so I don't know if this is him renegotiating there in front of the media or what, and if he's going to be a guy who draws a line in the sand and says, fine, I'm not going to fight.
It's more than whether or not his contract's up. He holds 2 titles, and nobody sees the fine print of any contract, but they have never had a situation where if you fight for a title, you're contractually obligated to remain in the promotion. They haven't had a situation where you have a champion who is out of contract and eligible to leave. I don't know the specifics of his contract.
Wait, say that again. They haven't had a champion that what?
Gets up and leaves and says, oh, that's the last fight on my contract. Usually to fight for a title, you have to give them an option to extend your contract.
What was GSP's situation? Because he was the champ and he stopped fighting.
Oh, that's true. But that's a retirement would be different, right? He didn't go try to fight somewhere else.
No, but he didn't ever officially retire, though, either.
Correct.
He kind of just stopped and said, I need to clear my head. I'm going crazy.
Can't handle the rhythm inside my head.
The rhythm in my head is driving me crazy.
That's a good point, because you can't force someone to fight.
Right.
You can't force them. You can say you can't fight elsewhere.
Yeah. They can take the belt. They can strip the title.
They can. All of that stuff can happen. It seems to me that he's setting the stage for what's probably going to be a negotiation to try and get a significant hike in the amount of money he gets.
Which I don't blame him.
No, I don't either. But you also run the risk of every person that's thought they're bigger than the sport has ended up being proven. Tito Ortiz, this isn't new. This sort of question of, hey, I'm not going to fight, we're going to have... Tito Ortiz had a years-long standoff with the UFC, which was weird because Dana White used to be his manager and all the different things.
Chuck Liddell.
I mean, they go back and they were editing or blurring out logos for his team punishment off of his previous fights, all of those different things that happen. That didn't turn out well for Tito, ultimately. I don't know if he ended up making as much on the back end as he was trying to hold out for. And you end up losing.
Did he have the leverage that McGregor had?
No, he doesn't, because he wasn't as good a fighter. And he wasn't
the draw. I mean, he was known. He was the biggest star, probably.
He was the biggest star in a much smaller pond.
Right, exactly.
He was a bigger fish in a smaller pond than McGregor is.
Yeah.
McGregor is the most popular, the most visible MMA fighter that there's ever been. He's a global phenomenon. He's but what happens next and how he's able to monetize that, and you're dealing with, he can't go to another promotion. You wouldn't be as interested in watching him fight.
Yeah, if he goes to Bellator, you've got he can fight Rory McDonald.
Is he going to fight Benson Henderson? Like those sort of are those the fights any of us really want to see?
No, you want to see him fight the guys that are in the UFC, whether it's the trilogy with Diaz, whether it's going to be Nurmagomedov, whether he pursues Woodley. There are so many more options because of his ability to go up and down in weight. Is he going to rematch Aldo if Aldo decides he wants to fight again? I don't know. I'm waiting to see if Dana allows him, because Dana's been pretty steadfast. And yeah, Conor can say what he likes, but he's not. He's going to have to give up one of the belts.
He's got to pick one.
Yeah.
Who do you want to see him fight next?
Who do I think deserves it?
Who do you want? We'll do that in a second. Who should get the next fight with him? Who do you want to see him fight?
I wouldn't mind seeing the third Diaz fight.
Yeah, that's kind of how I feel.
I wouldn't mind seeing the third Diaz fight. There's something about Diaz's style that I think is more problematic for him that makes it a more competitive fight. Because, again, Eddie Alvarez is a tough dude, and he made him look like a guy who just didn't deserve to be. And he said as much in the cage afterwards. By the way, I do love what he said in the cage. He goes, "I'd like to take this moment to apologize to absolutely nobody." I thought that was pretty funny. But, I mean, he made Alvarez just look like he's just a beginner.
Yep.
I mean, it was so lopsided, and there's something about Diaz's style that I think is problematic and makes it a competitive fight. It's his length. He's a southpaw. You know, he's a good stand-up fighter. He's dangerous on the ground as he learned. I think that's the one I'd like to see. I think the guy that deserves it is Tony Ferguson. And I know a lot of people feel like it's Khabib, but
I would agree with you.
Tony's been active.
Yeah,
and he's
I
on
agree
an
with you.
incredible win streak. And he's been fighting everybody put in front of him. I mean, he's been incredibly active. Khabib was gone for 2 years.
I don't believe the Nurmagomedov. If he's serious about the thing he posted on Twitter that he's going to fight for a title or he's not going to fight, like, no, that's not how this works.
What is it with fighters now? Is this the Conor effect? Because we talked about it with Juliana Pena saying, well, if I don't get the shot, then maybe I should go fight somewhere else. And now he's saying, well, I'm not going to fight. And Jose Aldo, I'm not going to fight. Now everybody's like kind of holding their breath and stomping their feet. And this seems to be a recent rash of fighters with this taking this position.
Would it be the same? I do think some of it is the Conor effect, that they feel that Conor's able to dictate terms in a way other fighters haven't. Conor's never threatened to not fight, though, right?
No, he's the opposite, and that's what Dana just screams to the hilltops about, is this guy will fight anybody, anytime, and he steps right out of the cage and says, get me this guy. He wants to fight. He's always there.
Because the part that I don't understand about all these fighters, that if you think that your next fight should be the title, you shouldn't care who gets put in front of you between then and there. Say, I want to fight for the title. I want to fight for the title right now. I'm ready to win the title right now. So feed me anybody in the interim that's going to get me to the title that I think I should get. And instead you're getting, well, I'm not going to fight unless I get a title shot.
Yeah. Well, Diaz is basically saying the same thing. Now, he's not saying it so much in pursuit of the title. I honestly believe him when he says he doesn't care about the belt.
I thought you were going to say he's just not saying it in multiple syllables.
Yeah, well, that too. Monosyllabic is really the specialty there.
I don't know what you're going to do.
But he understands the payday is attached to Conor.
Correct.
So the chance of him going out and losing is good, because he's a guy that doesn't have a brilliant record.
No.
He's not, so he could go out there his next fight and lose. So I kind of get his motivation. I'm not fighting anybody.
There's not anything he's going to do in the interim that's going to make that next McGregor fight bigger. It's not that's going to earn him more money, that's going to do anything. And I kind of agree with you that I don't think he cares about titles. I'd like to see the trilogy of the Diaz fight. What do you think about Woodley? Because that's the other fight from the fight. I agree with you.
He's too big, man.
But there's also part of it where if it's going to happen, that's not going to be the next fight. That's definitely not going to be. Yeah. It's going to be the thing that gets dangled
Give
out
him a
there,
crack at a third title belt.
Dude, there's part of me that, like, if he thinks he can do it, but Woodley's too strong.
Do you think Dana looks at that and go, I mean, it's a risk-reward thing, right? That's your prize right there. That's your cherry on top of the sundae is Conor McGregor. Do you risk that going up against a monster like Woodley, who's a great wrestler, even though he didn't use a ton of it? He did in this fight against Thompson, but that's the weakness of Conor. We could easily see a boring fight. Maybe he doesn't try to go with the right hand and try to knock him out the whole time, because I think that would serve Conor better.
Yes.
If he stayed on his feet, Conor might have a chance to pick him apart. If he doesn't land that punch, he reverts to his wrestling, which he's really good at.
Correct.
He's extremely powerful. That could be an ugly, dull, 5-round lay-and-pray fight for Woodley.
For McGregor's got one path to victory there.
Standing up.
It's standing up and making it a boxing match.
Yeah.
He's got to stand up and never get hit with one of those power rights. Because, look.
Which I don't think he would. I mean, I know that's a lot to say.
Yeah.
He'd never get hit. Of course he could get hit. I just think in terms of the stand-up game, Woodley is extremely one-dimensional. Extremely. He doesn't have a snapping jab, doesn't have a big left hook. It's the right hand. Everything else is sort of tried to set up the right hand. And Conor's just too smart, I think, to get hit by that. I think he knows that's coming. I think if he got hit by a punch, it'd have to be by a left hook or something that he wasn't expecting. I think you can watch out for that right hand and avoid it. I think Conor is that adept, if that's the one thing he needs to worry about. But when you throw in the wrestling, I could see that being just an ugly, boring, he beat him 5 rounds to none because he took him down every round and laid on him.
Okay, we'll put Woodley on the shelf for just a second. Who should get the next fight with McGregor? Because I find myself thinking Conor should be given the choice. You defend your 45 belt, probably against Aldo, or you get your fight at 55 against Diaz. That you give him the choice, which one he wants to do. The bigger payday is probably Diaz, and probably
without question,
is probably the more sort of appealing fight. He hasn't fought in the division he owns a title in now in 3 bouts.
Yeah,
that's not fair. Like and I'm not saying that Aldo should get that next, because I don't really care about him and his whininess. But Conor's got to decide if he is going to hold 2 belts. He's got to go fight at 45.
Yeah, I don't ever see him fighting at 45 again. I think when we talk about him in titles again, it'll be about him relinquishing the 45 belt. I think he can, but we've talked about how he looks cutting to that weight. I think it is a big deal. Now, he's never going to say it, and he says I could make that easy, and I could defend one month and one the next month, and maybe he could. But you talk about his natural weight and how tough it is and what he looks like cutting to 45. It's not good. He looks scary, sick when he cuts to 45. So I see him giving up that belt, defending the 55 belt, maybe challenging for the 70. I don't know. But if you're just talking about who deserves it, I don't think it's the biggest fight in terms of draw, but who deserves the next shot, I think it's Tony Ferguson. El Cucuy.
Who I have a bias against because he was such a jerk on The Ultimate Fighter, but apparently is not as terrible a person as I
had the same exact feeling you did. I wanted him to get beat so badly in the tough finale because he was such a creep on that show.
He was awful.
And he still got some of that in him.
Yeah.
When you hear him talk, I mean, the post-fight for his last fight, he's like, he made his one statement. He's like, I'm out. That's it. Walks off. I'm like, what are you doing, dude? So he still kind of got that I don't know what word to use there. He still just got kind of jerked to him.
He's got that King Mo to him.
Little bit. Yeah.
How about Gegard?
What Gegard said, yeah. He's got that to him. But I interviewed Tony, and he was actually really pleasant and
that's
cool.
what I've heard.
I mean, listen, that's 8 minutes of interaction. I don't pretend to know the guy. But it was much, I had a preconceived notion of who he is and what I thought of him going in. So I was kind of just ready for him to be this cocky, smug jerk. And he kind of was in a funny way.
Yeah.
I liked him more after I spoke to him. But in watching him after his last fight, he still got that edge that you kind of go, all right. But if we're talking deserve, again, just to get back to it, I understand Khabib thinks he deserves it. I don't think you can. I know he hasn't lost. He's undefeated, and he's a monster. He annihilated Johnson after he got rocked. Mm-hmm. He annihilated him. But you were out of the game for 2 years.
2 years.
Not by choice. I understand injuries happen. This is a guy I think fought 7 times in 2011.
Yeah.
And then just cannot stay healthy. He was thinking about retiring at one point, just couldn't get healthy. But I just don't think you come in after a 2-year absence and you've had 2 fights now, and then all of a sudden you're demanding, I get the shot or I'm not going to fight in the UFC. You got a guy who's been there the whole time and is on an incredible win streak in Tony Ferguson, who's taken on everybody they put in front of him and beating him. I think if we're talking deserve, he deserves it.
Last thing, Woodley. What's the next fight for him?
It's the rematch.
Got to be
right. Dana said after the fight, I mean, it's not official, but he said, I don't know how you don't make that rematch. That was the fight of the night. They got the fight of the night bonuses. There was some level, I won't say controversy, but there was debate as to, well, who did you think won? Who did you think won? That's the best. When you've got a fight like that you've got people on both sides going, I don't know.
Yeah.
I thought it was him. I thought that tells you it was a competitive, compelling fight if you've got people that are on both sides of it. And then it was competitive and compelling. And I think there's nothing more attractive than a rematch after people saw that. I think that's the most logical and the most attractive matchup.
It's got to be the headliner. It deserves to be the headliner of a card.
Yeah, unless they're fighting with Conor again.
Unless they're with Conor again. The other thing is, I think Wonder Boy destroys him next time. I think he knocks him out because I think he was tentative this time. I think he was worried about the wrestling. By his own words. I think he was worried about the wrestling, and I think he didn't really let loose.
Did he impress you with how tough he was?
Yes.
Though?
Yeah.
I was blown away. Because he doesn't, first of all, he never gets taken down. Second of all, I've never seen him really get hit clean. I mean, I haven't watched every fight he's ever fought, but he took that right hand. You saw on the slow motion replay, the eyes roll back.
Yep.
He went down, and then when he got caught in that guillotine, I'm like, that's under the chin. That is deep. It's over. And he survived it.
Yep.
I mean, I earned a different level of respect for him after that 4th round. For him to end up on top, throwing punches that weren't doing anything, but just to even be in a position to be
Bro, he got out.
Awake.
Yeah. Look, there is still a bias against karate guys. There still is, even after Machida and even after all the things that have happened.
Speaking of Machida, we won't see him for a while.
Yeah, you dummy. Read the instructions.
Yeah, the ingredient is on the list. This isn't a tainted supplement. This ingredient that's banned was on the list.
And he is out. Lyoto Machida is out
2018.
for 18 months. But you always wonder about the level of toughness. And that was, I don't want to say Machida's toughness was a question, but if he wasn't able to stay on his feet and keep his distance, he was in trouble.
Mm-hmm.
He was in trouble. And Stephen Thompson, his ability to withstand that, there might not be pound for pound a more powerful fighter in the world than Woodley.
Yeah, that dude is a rock.
Yeah.
That dude is an absolute building. I mean, to watch him. And I was impressed with his gas tank. Guys that are that heavily muscled.
Yep.
Gas out. It takes a lot of oxygen to feed those muscles, and that's why you see a lot of boxers, they don't want their fighters lifting a lot. They don't want them to get too bulky because you'd lose the snap in your punch and you would gas out because it takes so much oxygen to feed those muscles. They'd fatigue quicker.
Does that mean that I would last longer, have a larger gas tank?
You actually could have more stamina. You'd have to train, actually, Danny. But
screw that.
But you could still have a doughy build to you, and you could just last 12, 15 rounds in boxing, where a guy who's absolutely shredded and looks like he's a body model or something, he might gas out after 4 rounds.
That's what I'm going to tell my wife. I'm built for stamina, baby.
That's right. I can go a long
That's
time.
Right. I'm like a camel with a hump.
I'm the tortoise in this tortoise and hare race.
This is a blast. It was fun to talk to Gegard. You never know what that interview is going to be like. Because, I mean, it's over the phone. He's training in Ireland, and it was awesome.
I love his comments on King Mo, and his comments on just the life of what he thought he was going to achieve getting in there, money, girls, and how girls are a pain now. Yeah. And
that's what he's learned, but he likes his life.
Yeah.
He's comfortable.
Yeah, that conversation fit his demeanor, like just how you visualize him. That's what you should have expected. It was good.
We will be watching this weekend. We appreciate you all for listening. We are going to have some new things that'll be coming up. We're going to try and get some bands, some music producers involved in the show. We're going to
give some undiscovered bands a chance to get their product out there. Yeah. Get some exposure. How about that?
Yeah, that would be. So we'll be opening up that opportunity. That'll be coming up in December, and also maybe looking at a monthly local fighter spotlight. Some different things that we'll be trying. The best thing you can do if you enjoy the podcast is first keep downloading it. We really appreciate that, and leave us a review on iTunes. Thanks for listening. It's Fight. I'm Danny O'Neill along with Bob Stelt.